So my name is Joseph Kuo. I'm the founder of Abundance Wealth Planning. We're a firm that focuses on doing life and financial planning. It's a combination of both because really at the end of the day, the reason why you have finance and wealth is in order to have it benefit your life in some way. But actually before you start reading this, go ahead and just leave it for now. I will read the questions because there's a certain way I want you to do this. I should have mentioned that earlier.
One short.
Oh, yes. Okay. And does everybody have writing utensils?
Yes.
Okay. So the thing about financial planning is that for the most part, on the technical expertise basis, I mean, most people know the basics of investment and tax planning. Like if you were a certified financial planner, most of the technical basics you got it covered. So if you go to any CFP, most of them will know enough about investments and tax planning to help most people who don't know as much about the topic. I would say that the difference in different financial planners really comes down to style and how you view the relationship with clients and how you view relationship with money. And so, as opposed to try to explain all that, I brought an exercise for all of us to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out the questions, and these questions are essentially complete the sentence type questions. Don't think about them right from your gut, your reaction for what comes up to you as you read these questions. And I'm going to read the questions because I'm going to pace how long you get to work on a particular question. Then you got to go to the next one. All right, so why don't we do this first, and I'll talk a little bit more about this after you guys sit down with exercise. All right, ready? All right, so the first question is, money is. Write down what comes to mind. Don't censor or filter yourself. Just write what comes to mind. Money is. Right. So we're going to go to the next question. Growing up in my family, money was used as a tool to. Growing up, I learned from my dad or guardian that I must be what about money. Again, it's not important for it to be factual. It just needs to be honest. All right, I'll go to the next one. Growing up, I learned from my mom, or again, guardian, to be what about money? The rich are. The poor are. Now we're going to turn out to the back. It's just a few more questions. In order to be rich, I must. The responsibility I've always wanted to get rid of is. I have always wanted to. And I'm happy as when. So I invite you to take a look at your answers. And if you're like most people I've met, you'll find out a lot of your answers conflict with each other. So that's the thing. Right? I mean, as we grow up, we all, in reaction to things that are happening around us, to our environment, to what we're taught, we develop beliefs, we develop habits that help us process life. Otherwise, life gets so complicated. So it's a shortcut, but over time that shortcut also becomes the self-imposed limits because those shortcuts become your identity, right? And so the thing about money and wealth is I believe at the core, right? Everybody wants some form of a meaningful life. When you go to bed at night, you close your eyes, that you feel like, hey, I've done great today. I've done something. I've contributed in some way. People want to be able to look in their loved ones' eyes and see their love reflected back to them. They enjoy spending time with loved ones. People want to be able to, at the end of a life, feel like I've provided for my family and I've left behind stories which my family can remember. A legacy from which my family can remember and tell stories about me for generations.
All right, honey, I'm gonna go.
Some form of that, everybody wants that at the end of the day. And at the same time, as we develop these beliefs and these habits, those are the things that get us to where we are today. Right? So when people come in and say that I want to get financial planning, I want to do something different, I want more with my life, what they are fundamentally saying at that point, when you stop and think about it, is that my habits and my belief have served me so far, but they're no longer enough. I want to re-examine what my habits are, and I want to re-look at my subconscious beliefs. I mean, when you think about it, that's really what you're asking, and most people don't realize that that's really what they're asking. So I honor the people who come to search for a financial planner to fundamentally re-examine their life in some way and say that I want something different. And so that's what I mean by a lot of times when you're working with a financial planner, a lot of the technical stuff that they offer really is very similar. The difference is really in the style on how you have these conversations and the honor that you provide to the people who come in to recognize that you're who you are and that's okay. And you want to be somewhere different and that's also okay. So let's work together to figure out what that means for you. What does it mean for you to be able to go to bed at night and say that, wow, I did great today? Right? What needs to happen for you to be able to have that relationship with your family where you feel that I love and I'm loved in return? And what needs to happen so that at the end of your time on earth, that you can look back and say that I've done everything I could to provide for the ones I love, I created a legacy that is going to be worth telling. And so when I work with clients, it is a combination of both. There is a lot of technical aspect of what it is I do with respect to looking at investment, looking at tax, planning, and so on. But I would say that even before that, the most important thing that happens with me and clients is starting the process of a series of clarification for what is your outcome, what is your intention, what is the purpose that you want to do with this relationship that we have, and what is the intention that you want to do with the changes that you want to make. Right? Otherwise, we're going after something without necessarily having an outcome in mind. And we end up going nowhere, we end up spinning circles. Or you end up reaching a destination and realize that that really wasn't what you wanted. And so I want to work with clients to get to a point where I'm really making an impact in their life. And so the people that I love working with are people who, in addition to just learning skills and knowledge on how do I do something better, is to be willing to develop I've heard this analogy one time of horizontal learning and vertical development. So a horizontal learning is essentially you have a container and you're filling it in with liquids, right? You're learning skills, you're learning knowledge, and it allows you to do the things that you want to do better. Vertical development is the discernment to be able to see the container that you're working with and make a decision on whether this is the right container for you. And the people that I enjoy working with are the people who are willing to take that leap, to say that I am here to talk about my finances, and what is it that I want to do with my finances? Where is that level underneath? Right? If you have more money, then what? If you're able to, if we can get together and grow your wealth 10, 20% next year, what difference would it make to your life? And why would that difference be important? Right? Because those are the things that ultimately is going to make an impact to your life. So that's what I do, and that's what I like to do.
So do you go over these answers?
With clients, we sit one-on-one and we go over them together. There's no right answer. The point of having these questionnaires is twofold. One is to realize that for most people, we're complicated things. There's no one reason why we want anything. Right? There's a lot of different reasons, a lot of different goals. And so I find that sometimes when you go to a financial planner and they ask, well, I can help you calculate how much you need in retirement, and so how much you need to save now by figuring out what your goals are and how much it costs. Right? So what are your goals, how much does it cost, and when you want it? And I sometimes find it to be very limiting because people don't necessarily know what it is they want. And you're also making the assumption that you know today what you'll want 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. Right? So we start with this exercise, part of it to help people realize that we all want many different things. However, if you're willing to go one level deeper, you'll realize that there's many times what you really want is the same thing, but your strategy or what you believe, what it takes for you to get what you want differs because of what you learn, because of your conversation with others. And so you start having a lot of conflicting plans within you because you think, well, if I do this, I can get what I want. And then I hear somebody else say something, well, I heard on TV, or I remember something someone else said, and oh, maybe I need to do this as well. People started operating differently in different situations. And that's part of the reason why there's this thing about sabotage, right? People who have functioned in scarcity because they didn't have very much, and they work very hard to create something. And then once what they create gets to a certain point, they'll start self-sabotaging because they can't figure out sabotaging.
Oh, that's so odd.
Because they can't figure out where to go from there. Because two different things, right? One, they realize that what they are going for wasn't necessarily what they want. They thought that they would get to where they want, where it actually isn't. Or two, they started having a lot of mixed emotions about what they believe they need to give up if they go beyond this point, and they're not willing to give that up. And so I'll speak more concretely. For example, somebody might have decided that they really want to care for their family, they want to spend more time with kids, so they decide to start their own business. And that person may not have realized that starting your own business really had nothing to do with being able to spend more time with your family. So what they do is that in the beginning, they might be very motivated in creating a successful business. They're working very hard at it. And maybe at one point in time, they realize that, oh my God, I'm spending so much time trying to create this business. I'm actually giving up the reasons why I got into the business in the first place. And they start pulling back on the business, right? And the way that it might show up might be they start capping how successful they're willing to allow their business to be because their fear that if they go beyond this level of clients or customers or revenue, whatever, they will have even less time for their family. So they will actively throttle back what it is they're doing for the business. But in reality, if they're willing to stop and say, well, what does this business mean for me, for my family? They might be willing to make different decisions, which is that if my goal is to spend time with my family, but I also have this mission and vision that I want to share with the world, the business I created, then maybe instead of pulling back, maybe the thing to do is to start delegating. Right? But you need to have that awareness to start asking yourself those questions. And so that's the thing that we do with these questionnaires, to help people to start exploring these things, right? And to bring more a varied perspective, so that maybe in your head you think that this is the only choice I have, when in reality there are actually many different possibilities that can be had. And so having a thinking partner in this is something that can be really, really helpful.
That's what you are, the thinking partner.
Yes. And they have technical expertise. But at the end of the day, the technical expertise doesn't mean anything if people can't follow it. And so a big part of this is that evocation, right? Figuring out what it is you really want, what your intentions are, and invoking your own motivation. And then I can support you along the way with the technical knowledge and also by being a person who's checking for congruence. Right? Somebody says that I always wanted to be able to travel with my family, all of us decided that, you know what, everybody around me is, buying expensive cars, I want to do the same. It's like, okay, does this really contribute to where you want to go in here? Maybe, maybe not. And I don't make an assumption that just because you say you want to travel with your family means that you shouldn't buy a car. No, that's not what I meant. It's simply an opportunity for you to re-examine these decisions, to say, oh, you know what, right now for me, that actually is important because that's going to help me do this, this, and that. Like, well, then you have your answer. But I would encourage people then to not fall into a trap of doing something just because they see other people doing it, right? Without necessarily thinking for themselves, well, what would I get from this? So, any other questions?
So, are you the type of financial planner that charges independently of any product or anything? Do you charge to manage portfolios? How do you work?
Right. So I don't sell products. It was one of the reasons why I don't conflict with anybody else who sells insurance and financial products. So I don't sell products. And as far as whether I manage asset, so I can manage asset. It depends on client. So I do provide financial coaching, financial working with clients on finance without necessarily having to manage assets. But then I charge a fee minimum in order to kind of make it an equitable business process, right? So that I charge a minimum for people who do not invest with me, because then it affords me to provide all the service they need. And then for the people who do want me to manage assets, then I will also manage assets for them if that's what they want. Now, in the Bay Area, a lot of people have real estate, for example, or they have a lot of assets in their business, so they don't have a lot of investable assets. So there's a way for me to work with them, regardless of how much investable assets they have.
So I'm just curious, do you have clients who pay you basically to learn from you, where you just coach them? So
I will be honest and say that, so yes, if they're willing, if they think that the coaching fee they're paying, right, if they're willing to pay the coaching fee, I do have clients who actually, for example, I have a client who started a tech startup with his graduate student classmates from Berkeley. And then as he left the startup, he sold his share and he's like, well, I don't know what to do with this, right? Because he's in his late 20s and he still wanted to do other things with his life. And so he hired me because he wanted to make sure that he's thinking responsibly with whatever amount of money he has and want to figure out where he wants to go from there. And so we end up having a lot of conversations around kind of a lot of his questions around his values and his self-worth. Because coming out from this startup he's got, on one hand he's proud that he started his startup. On the other hand, he also feels like he really hasn't done anything in his life. And that as he goes now to talk to other startups, he's very much coming from a place of, I don't really know anything. I mean, these other startups, the CEOs, the people in there, they've been running and doing serial startup for the last 20 years. They got 5, 6 startups under their belt. I've done one with some classmates over the last couple of years. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm doing. And having to have those conversations to help him realize, well, what is the vision that he's bringing to the world and how does he communicate that vision is actually also part of the things that he gets to figure out for himself, but then I support him through it. But also, a lot of that is just, how do I think about investments? Why do I want to buy insurance? Well, what does it mean by term insurance versus permanent insurance? By all those things become part of that conversation as well.
Right.
Thank you, Joseph.